like to begin with I love you all, and we'll end with that as well. But that is a large part of my story, and I want to share with you kind of a testimonial how we got here, how I ended up in this spot, in this place, and how this service kind of formulated and ended up on this side of town, and a very big God thing, and a lot of God things lined up along the way, and a lot of people in the right places have come together to make some things possible that without Jesus in their heart, those things wouldn't have happened. So I kind of made some notes, but I don't know if those are going to do me any good. So I grew up, I'm a Northwest Missouri boy. I grew up around here, north here, about 40 minutes north here in a little town called Stewartsville. Country boy, Northwest Missouri. Grew up around here, went to college in St. Joseph, ran off to the Rocky Mountains for a year, and ended up back here and married to my beautiful wife, Laura, who's the best decision I ever made, right back there. And if you know her, you know that's true. And she also is a guiding principle in my life, and I run everything by her. And when we were starting this, she said, you need a continuity disaster recovery plan, and that is where you're prepared for the worst case scenario. And that is for when the AV goes down and there's no lights and sounds and there's no sermon. So you need to be prepared for that. And that was 6 months ago. I said, yeah, sure, babe. Got it. I'm on that. And then every month, our ticker came up that was, are we on track for this launch? And she said, yeah, you're looking good, except you have no continuity disaster recovery plan. I said, yeah, I know, I'm on it. And that's happened every month for the last 6 months, and here we are. You're experiencing my continuity disaster recovery plan. And I can't even say it right, but this is where we are. So pray for her. And her patience and her ability to keep coaching me forward in a manner that's not always off the cuff and one line at a time. So Laura and I got married, and we lived in North Kansas City, and I was really restless there. I grew up in church, but I was way away from Jesus during college times and thereafter. And so I had a church basis, but I didn't have a strong spiritual faith life. But I knew Jesus, and I knew he was there for me. But I never pressed in and leaned in and experienced what he had for me. And in our young married life, we decided, church, we grew up in church, we should try this, we should go. And we started going to a church, which was Great Winter Methodist Church. And that's what we did, is we showed up and we attended, and once a month, every other month. And it was really good, and it was a great sermon. It was fantastic. And we're kind of restless. We had careers. We were busy. We had our first child. We had Grant, and that rocked my world. Having a child, having something that I was responsible for, a living, breathing thing that I was supposed to keep alive, that I was supposed to keep warm and keep fed and keep happy and keep from crying. And he was colicky. He was crying all the time, all night long. And in those, if you have young parents in here, in those awake but asleep but awake moments throughout the night, you really need something to lean into. And I really felt this need for, I felt this presence, like I could lean into Jesus, but I hadn't felt that relationship. I knew there was more. I knew there was farther I could go, but I didn't know what to do. And I'd pray, well, bouncing the baby, you pray, and he's screaming in your ear, and you're bouncing the baby, and you really don't know what to do, and you're at that vulnerable moment. That's one of those places that I really leaned in leaned into the Lord and prayed. Prayer brought me through that time. And we moved to get to a happier spot. We moved to Kearney, and we love Kearney. And we moved here 7 years ago. And when we moved here, it was to get a little space, a little breathing room, a little outside of the city. And Kearney's provided that for us. It's been this wonderful place. And our second child, Owen, came along, and he cried no less than Grant did. But there was more breathing room and more space and more small town community that we felt here than we had in the city. And we started going to the First United Methodist Church on the east side of town, and we attended the 1045 traditional service there, and it was a great service. They had a great choir. They still do have a great choir. And that was our service we were attending, and we would come pretty regularly until the kids would start crying. And then we'd sometimes leave, and we'd stay in that service. And then round about 4 years ago, in that service we had Lou Marchbank sat behind me, and Lou Marchbank said, "Hey, we got a veteran that came by the church, and he needs a wheelchair ramp built. And can you do that?" I was like, "Yeah, you got the right person, Lou. I can build a wheelchair ramp." And Tyler Wood was sitting right next to me, and Tyler Wood's a veteran. I said, "Tyler, how do you feel about?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm all in. Let's do that." So I called Tim Nelson. Tim Nelson's here, and I called Tim. I said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this wheelchair ramp thing. How should we proceed?" And a good friend of mine, Charlie Turner, was a neighbor, and Charlie, I ran it by him, and he said, "We should talk to Rebuilding Together Clay County." I thought, "Yeah, I should." Ed Kippard's here. I got all these wonderful people just came here this morning to be a part of this. Thank you, Jesus, for putting these people here, because Tim's not here and Ed's here, and Ed's with Rebuilding Together Clay County, and I can call up and I get a hold of Clay and Cleary and talk to Ed, and we get this thing put together. Like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to build this wheelchair ramp, and to back up 2 steps in my story, the reason I knew Tyler Wood, he was sitting next to me, is he was in my community group. And how I got in that community group, as you all remember from earlier in the story with Laura, one time when I had a crying kid at service, and I took him out of the service, out the door. It was a good opportune time. They were passing the plate. And I took the kid out. And in the bulletin, you notice we don't do this anymore. In the bulletin, there's a tear-off flap. And on that tear-off flap, you could sign up for things. And Laura wrote, "Community group," my name, my email address, my phone number, dropped it in the plate. Spencer had been talking about it for a couple weeks, and so, I came back in, kids calmed down, we're good, ready for the message. She said, "I signed you up for that community group thing." Okay, cool. Because at that point in my life, when we moved to Kearney, we had our second child, and I was overcome with some anxiety about dropping my kids off at daycare, and I was not dealing well with it. I would get short of breath. I didn't like dropping Grant off at daycare. I did not enjoy it. It was really, somebody's texting me. If it's one of you guys, stop. And I would get kind of, I would get really nervous about, yet again, one of those places where I had to lean into Jesus every morning when I dropped him off at daycare. I had this anxiety, this fear that I wasn't going to be able to make it back there, or something was going to happen and I couldn't get back to him, or something was going to go wrong and I'm at a distance. He's not with me. He's not with his mother. I had this anxiety. So Laura and I talked it through, and me being the one with the anxiety there, and the opportunity, because I was kind of a nomad on careers, I just kind of retired and became a stay-at-home dad and stayed home with the boys. So that's part of the reason she signed me up for that community group, is because I spent all my waking hours with people shorter than my knees. And those of you that have done that, it gets taxing. It's your conversation. You try to talk to them like adults as much as you can, and I still carry on that adult conversation with the kids, but you're not getting a whole lot of that adult content coming back. So Laura, she was in her right place in her heart. She signed me up for that community group, and So she signs me up, and of course, I'll try anything once. So she signs me up for the group. I think, great, yeah, I trust you, Dave. Love you, I'll do it. So I show up to the first night in community group. There's a dozen people there at this house, and by a dozen people, I mean there were 6 couples and me. And so it was great, but I just got to bounce around the room, and we had lasagna. I don't like Italian food, but it was great, and it was really good lasagna. There was lots of breadsticks, and the salad was really good. And we had great fellowship. We talked. We got to meet one another. We got to just fellowship together that first night. I went home, and Laura said, "How was it?" I said, "It was great. Wish you would have been there." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, There was couples. We were all kind of the same life stage, and everybody had kids, and the kids were there. There's childcare. The church does childcare reimbursement for community groups. A little plug there. So if you're on the fence about whether you want to do a community group or not, you're worried about childcare, they'll actually reimburse your childcare for that. That's how important we feel like groups are to spiritual development. So we get in this group. The next week, I was able to get my in-laws, I think, came down and watched the kids, and Laura went to group with me, and we signed up, we were in, and we just kind of jumped into this group of a dozen other folks that were in the church we didn't really know. But we're all kind of going through the same life, same struggles, little kids, kind of same life stage, and we really meshed together. Tyler was in there with me, and so then fast forward a couple weeks, Lou says, "Hey, you guys build a wheelchair ramp." So talked to Clay, got me in touch with Ed, and we went off and did a service project and built with Tim and Vince, and we built this wheelchair ramp with all the guys from our community group for a veteran over in Excelsior Springs, and it was a phenomenal fellowship service project experience. We had the Honorable George Handy there, who was able to completely control the chaos that we were creating around there. He knew, we'd keep having questions, and he knew what to do next, and it was a great experience. So that was kind of my initiation into something more than being a Sunday morning church-going attendee. So we'd gone every week for probably a year, and we got into this group, and then we're just in it, and we're surrounded by this family, this group that we're loved by, we're known by. We see them on Sunday mornings, we saw them on Sunday evenings when we get together for group, for intentional spiritual development. And through that group, we would do service projects, we would bake cookies, and really that's where the studies we did within that group really started growing my faith. I had a very surface level faith. Like I said, I knew I was there to lean in, but the more you experience life with people who know Jesus, and you experience Jesus through them, the love of Christ through people, is how my faith has grown and developed. So being a social person, by those relationships I've formed and experienced the unconditional love of Christ through the unconditional love that he's instilled in others has been miraculous. So through this, I've done 2 other community group series since then. I'm on my 3rd round of a community group. If you have been in a group or in a group, I applaud you for being in a group. If you would like to be in a group, I would love to talk to you more about group and group life, and getting in one of those, and even leading one and setting one up. We don't got to go through a formal plan to set it up. We can grab a couple friends. If you say, "Hey, I got these 2 friends and these 2 friends," I'll be more than happy. I know almost every one of you in here. More than happy to fill out your group with some other folks. But it is a life-changing spiritual experience to dive into spiritual connectivity with those in your worshiping faith community. So that is really where my life started rapidly speeding up into ministry, if you will, was being part of these small groups. So then fast forward a couple years, I hang around the church a lot because I got 2 little kids, and these 2 little kids went through Joyful Noise Preschool that we have at the church. So then you start off on Tuesday, Thursdays for a couple hours, and I'm kind of free, and I don't know what to do with my hands. because I got kids, I'm dropping kids off at the church, and I'm here. So started, helping out with some things around there. Just always popping in on Spencer, how he likes that, and say, hey, can I do anything? No? Okay. See you later. I'll be back at noon if you need anything. And then I'd come back and I'd get the kids, and I went like that, and he started realizing that I've got some availability and some bandwidth, and I'm doing these projects, doing these service projects. We've been, our work with rebuilding kind of picked up. We did several ramps over the next couple of years. I take the kids with me. I think if you guys have seen some of the pictures of the church, some of the slides that come up, I always take the little fellas with me, and before they started school, they were great workers. But after they started school, they found out there's more fun things than moving dirt with a shovel. And so, but that's a different topic. So we made church a priority. We made service a priority. Laura and I had made, one of our not negotiable things was our Sunday morning attendance. We kind of reset. That was a reset for our lives. We had Sunday morning attendance, and Sunday evening was a meal with friends in our community group to really reset our life, reset our heart for each tumultuous week that we'd start. And her in the workplace, me in the trenches of at-home dad-child warfare, and that was this great reset that kept us centered, kept us grounded and connected as we moved through life. And I know a lot of you got junior high kids and high school kids just rolling your eyes at me saying, Mitch, it's coming. The tumultuous part's coming. You're in the honeymoon phase of children. It's coming, and I appreciate that. Maybe the AV will stop working 5 years from now. I'll get to do this again and do an updated version. But part of this being part of this community and being part of this spiritually connected group, and always kind of looking out for the community and your neighbors and being involved in these projects. United Methodist Church had an opportunity to give some grants for some churches that were experiencing growth, and some communities that were experiencing growth, and some opportunities to do some new things and some new places for some new people. And we were kind of top of their list as an opportunity to do that. And Spencer asked me what I thought. I said, yeah, sure, it sounds like a great idea. And he said, good. He goes, you think you could, is this something you'd be able to kind of lead up? And I said, yeah, sure, sounds like a great idea. And so we applied, we got the grant, and that was kind of the start of getting back, getting us to this space, to this growth, to this outreach. So to cast the vision for what we're looking for, what we're trying, what the conference, and through this promoting of us and giving us this opportunity to come together on this side of town, it really comes back to some grassroots Wesleyan growth and experience. So John Wesley, and I'll probably butcher all this, so stop the footage. But you can clarify it with Spencer, but John Wesley, here, whenever they did the Methodism here in the United States, they would get together, and they had circuit riders, who was the pastor who'd ride around and give the message, and he'd show up everywhere about once a month, and they do, that's when they would do communion, and that's when they would do, they get their live preaching from that circuit riding pastor who came around, which is really cool. Like we do, traditionally we do communion on the second Sunday of the month. That's actually when our circuit rider came through town 150 years ago to Kearney, and it was the second Sunday of the month is whenever he came through. So that's pretty cool history that we have as our church family. But these circuit riders, they go around, they have these society meetings. And the society meeting is what we are right here. It's a meeting, a group of people who are living in community together. And this society meeting, they would get together for worship and sing and praise on a weekly basis. And they were all agricultural farming communities, and they come together in one spot, usually somebody's house. They usually didn't have a building or a place. They'd set up an area for worship. And they'd come together and they'd worship and they'd have some teaching. And then they would, and that would be their society meeting. And then they would break off into smaller groups of a dozen people and do these, what we call community groups or life groups. And they called them class meetings. Thank you, Tim. So they had these class meetings, and these class meetings would come together, and they would do exactly what I was talking about a community group of this upholding one another and more fellowship, and they usually have a meal. And then once a week, then those class meetings would break off into what they called band meetings. And band meetings are really intentional accountability groups of 3 to 5 people of the same gender. The men would get together, the women would get together. Usually they broke out of those class meetings, and they would get together, and it would be a 30-minute intensive where they would gather around, they would open in prayer, and they would kind of divulge their sins of the week and what they're struggling with internally, and or land the plane. And so they would, I love you guys, and I appreciate every opportunity you'll give me to talk to you. This is all the content I have. So these band meetings, they would get together, and I'm in one, and I want to take this opportunity to tell you that it is a phenomenal thing. If you want to dip your toes in the water of intentional spiritual development, get into a community group. Find a group, come talk to me, I will get you in a group. We will make a group for you, we will build a group around you. But then to continue on, there's some awesome opportunities in accountability groups as well beyond that. And that is kind of how I got to this place, to be in this spot in front of you this morning. But how this group and this service is designed is it is here to reach into our communities, to reach into these neighborhoods, these houses being built, to make friends and neighbors that we have, relatives we have that don't know Jesus, who don't have an experience with Christ, who don't have an intentional spiritual development plan in their life, to bring them in, introduce them to this community and this place where we are loved, we are with one another in community, loving Christ and carrying out his mission into the world. And that is what we're hoping to create with this space. So without any further ado, I'm going to pray. And thank you for joining us. I'll invite the band to come up because I don't pray as long as Spencer, so you may want to come faster. Dear Lord, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to be here with these gracious, forgiving folks. Lord, they're all a vital part of your ministry on this west side of town. Lord, thank you for their presence and their peace and their open hearts to invite you in so they can multiply your love in their heart, Lord, and take it out into their community. To invite their friends, to invite their neighbors, to invite those that are struggling, running with the hustle and bustle of life and not having the grounded place to reset their week, Lord, reposition themselves, recenter themselves in you, to set their focus and eyes upon you, where they can lean in, Lord, lean into you, so they can have peace and emit the love of Christ into the world. Lord, we love you, and we love all you've done for us. Help us to be your love. Lord, to continue to be your love. Thank you for all the opportunities you've provided us to share that love and for empowering us to be love to the world as you were love for the world.